Arendt moves from historical perspective to a kind of apocalyptic philosophy as she brings together the end of the second section of this book, Imperialism. We have several key movements which have come together here just before World War I to make conditions following the war both foreseeable and probably inevitable. We have the power of capital, of money, reaching out to literally colonize the continents beyond Europe, replacing any idea of domestic economic production with a bourgeoisie-led foreign policy for expansion that nation-states follow. We have the abdication of responsibility in colonial governance with the emergence of bureaucracy and the creation of a mythology of the civilized character. We have the development of race thinking that rises up in opposition to the broader democratic urge to equality. And along with it, the pan movements, which lead to a kind of tribalism and lawlessness, linking colonial gold and abstractions of power to the propagation of fear of the other in the masses. And now in Chapter 9, we see that following World War I, any consideration for refugees has no foundation. The very concept of the rights of man emerging from the French Revolution and once promising a kind of universal equality for all is, in the end, based only upon being recognized first as belonging to a nation. Refugees, the stateless, and yes, we're talking about the Jews, but also about thousands and thousands of others, of Russians and Armenians and Greeks and Arabs and Ukrainians and others, over 1/4 of the populations in some regions, all displaced. But I have to be careful of my words here. Notice what I did. I called them displaced, like the phrase displaced peoples we use so often now, which is really a euphemism which obscures or eliminates the real problem for Arendt. They are stateless. And without a state, without a political community to which they belong, they have no law to protect them or to account for them. They are literally outlaws. Notice the paradoxes. You can't send them home in repatriation because they have no home or country that will take them. You can't easily naturalize them because of their sheer numbers, and each has a particular cultural identity that resists assimilation. In an age of tribal race thinking, that's a problem. They can't get homes or jobs because they have no status. What has worked in the past is to ignore them, to leave them as invisibles, but now after global conflict, their numbers make them impossible to ignore. Now, there is a new League of Nations, but it soon becomes clear that the League members are themselves diplomats of nation-states, and so do not champion any rights for them. In fact, much of the work of international conferences of the time is trying to see how these stateless people might be made deportable. To be made deportable. Failing this, we settle on new terms that essentially erase the shame of the issue. Displaced persons implies at least that they have come from somewhere and will ultimately return. Stateless, for Arendt, shows the nation-state that it fails. Its laws cannot accommodate those outside of it, that there is no authority or agency to justify or support anything we might call human rights or the inalienable rights of man. And if the law does not apply to everyone equally, what is it but privilege, injustice? Now, Arendt points out that not even the Holocaust victims themselves ever appealed during or after their horror to a principle like human rights. Everyone understood it as a false abstraction. Better, almost, to commit a crime and be placed in the host country's justice system. There, at least, and at last, the stateless person has a status that's recognized, a system of laws and procedures that protect and house them. So only the innocent suffer the worst, then. Invisible and vulnerable to charity or to the whims of cruel and mechanized policy, for the stateless there is no appeal. Inside a single page, Arendt mentions that Jews will eventually be recognized only by the creation of the State of Israel. But at the same time, this will create a condition of statelessness for Palestinians. And she describes, too, Hitler's methods in this light. First, test the waters. Make the Jews non-recognized minorities, then drive them from the country as stateless. This checks to be sure that no other nation-state cares enough to take them. Finally, round them up into extermination camps where the problem of statelessness can finally be resolved. And it isn't as if other countries weren't themselves looking for solutions. Paralyzed diplomatically, solutions to the stateless populations in Europe were left often to the civilian police. Because no laws prevented cruelty here, the methods which developed to control the anarchy were not that far from Germany's. We wonder, but we should not, Arendt says, why so many domestic police actually assisted the invading Nazis in their methods of population management. Two things emerge here at last. First, the nation-state as an ideal for principles of human rights and mankind as arbiter of law, this is revealed as the fraud it has been. Second, the gloves of tribalism and race thinking are off, and the stateless, far from finding advantage or tolerance as they might have in the past, find themselves defenseless. Arendt ends the chapter in even more gloom. Writing in 1966, remember, she foresees how even democracies could find themselves voting for these methods of elimination. That the fear which comes from broken ideology inevitably produces the invention of stateless enemies within. That the collapse of even the highest ideals of empire will be of our own making. It's a chilling chapter, but not half as much as what now follows. The final section of the book, her discussion of totalitarianism itself.